Hello, welcome everybody welcome to all the Microsoft Innovative Educator community. Thank you to the Club ME participants, our MI expert as well, and Showcase School, and in general to all the participants that they are connected today from different locations. We hope you all and your beloved ones will be safe and looking forward to back to normal situation where we can really meet face to face. As you see, this session will be English spoken, but you can activate your subtitles selecting CC on the right bottom of your screen, activating your subtitles and select the language. So we do remind you that during this session, your name and email address can be visible by the producers of this session. So just this is the first setup, and just remind you that we will have during all the session, you can have open the Q&A so we can answer you during this session as well. First of all, I also want to let you know, please don't forget to publish with our hashtag Tu clase en casa, so you can share your insights and experience in remote learning to this session. As speakers, we have today two people from local education team. My name is Maria Comín, and I am the Learning Solution Specialist for Spain. Or as you remember me, I'm also the responsable de la comunidad educativa de Microsoft in España. And then Andrea Plaza, who is going to join later. She is the Customer Success Manager and responsable de formación in España. But as you know, this is a very special moment of the series of VIP Moments with the initiatives we launched during this course. And today we will have our guest speaker, Anthony Salcito, Vice President Worldwide in Education at Microsoft. So the topics we are going to cover is basically first Andrea is going to cover in a few seconds the different resources we have for remote learning. And then Anthony will cover his top of mind, and then he will share some stories, inspirational stories about remote learning. He's discovering as well, he can share. And then we'll have also an introduction to the Viernes de Talks with 20 minutes of Q&A and then a wrap-up and feedback session. We really hope you enjoy this session. We prepare with a lot of effort, and we want to give thanks to Anthony and all his team for the great support we are receiving all around the world from core team, and especially for this connection with the Spanish community. And also big thanks to Nicole Porter and Lee Cresio as well for making possible this connection and for the great coordinations. So right now I'm going to give the voice to Andrea, who is going to cover the resources that we're going to present. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Maria. Well, I'm going to share you the resources about the remote learning experiences that we are having these days. The new experience that we are going to present today is Viernes de Talks that Anthony will introduce you later. You can find information about this kind of talks with people in www.aka.ms/Viernes de Talks. And also you will find here the recording and presentation of this session. Also, over the next few days, we will announce you new courses in Spanish and other languages in our MEC, MAC, about how to create remote learning experience at different levels. You will be able to find the resources to deepen with teams, keeping students engaged, and accessibility in /Tu clase en remoto MEC, MAC. And finally, as many of you already know, you have the hub about remote learning in Spanish with all the remote learning resources in Office 365 in remote. So thank you, and that's all from my side, Maria and Anthony.
Thank you very much, Andrea. And now, as we promised to you, we have here with us Anthony Salcito, the Vice President Worldwide Education Microsoft. Anthony, thank you very much, and over to you on these slides now.
Thank you, Maria, and it's really a great honor to be with all of you virtually today. I want to just start by sharing a wish that all of you are staying safe and keeping your family safe during this unprecedented time. It's certainly been great to connect with schools digitally throughout the last few weeks and months and reinforce our ability to strengthen our community. We know throughout all of this, the leadership, the learnings that we're getting from our MIE Showcase School and educator communities has truly been amazing and inspirational. And at Microsoft, we're working hard to honor your leadership and commitment with resourcing and support as best we can. We've been working on remote learning scenarios in response to COVID since early January, just right after the start of the outbreak in China. And we had been working with China schools and universities on remote learning support that extended to Hong Kong, Taiwan, Korea, and certainly Italy just most recently. And now we're engaged around the world, both with rapid support for adoption of technology, but helping to foster best practices and learnings. During this time when all of us are stressed based on the impact on our personal lives, the dynamics of our time and calendar being challenged by both remote learning engagement that you're needing, the ability to reskill on new approaches to your classrooms, and then also dealing with all the personal impact, we understand this is a stressful time. So hopefully these types of connections can give us an opportunity to decompress and learn as we hear from great examples throughout the world. As I move to the next slide, I wanted to just reflect that this is really a moment in time. We've talked about things like the 21st century development goals and UNESCO priorities around the world. It's never been more clear that access to education and learning is critical for the survival of our planet. And I'm hopeful that students who are going through COVID are going to be motivated to understand how they can apply their own talent to both study disease control and pandemic control, understand data modeling to figure out how to predict need, understand the dynamics of responding to climate change based on insight that we gain. Ultimately, there's going to be a future generation of leaders that will be inspired by the crisis that we're living through today. And we've got to recognize the value of what we do in our education systems to fuel the future. As we go to the next slide, the reality is, we think about the world of technology. One of the best, and I like to use some positive thinking in this time of tremendous depression, perhaps, or uncertainty, is thinking about what's the positives that will come. For me, the first thing that I think will happen, and is starting to happen already, based on crisis response, but certainly I think will become more core as we go forward, is understanding technology more richly across the workloads. I will say for the last 3 decades, most of our focus at the school leader and really the system of education has been about bringing technology into the school, into the classroom. In many cases, to remove what had been done with physical materials, whether books or digital learning activities, to replace it with digital experiences. But very little focus has been on extending the boundaries of the school and the classroom in a real way at the system level. Certainly our children, our students, all of us have embraced a digital life beyond the school. But the thinking of school leadership has been largely focused on supporting the school and classroom. What we're seeing now with remote learning is a real understanding that technology's greatest value is to keep us connected when we're not together. And that's a huge shift that I think we'll need to carry as we go forward to extend the evolution of technology's impact. The greatest thing that I think that we've seen in this time where technology has risen in importance in every society is a recognition of what makes us all human. As we use more digital tools to communicate with our families, as we're using technology to support the remote learning that's going on with our students, what's happened is a recognition of the value that all of us have as humans, the need to gather together again, the desire to hug our loved ones and to see our children face to face in our classrooms. And what's happened is a recognition that all of us rise in a need for humanity, even while digital becomes more important. This is absolutely happening with teachers. Perhaps the best outcome that I can think of with regards to education in COVID response is that the role of teachers is becoming ever more clear in homes. Those of you with children probably are dealing with remote learning pressure yourselves. I can tell you every day I'm being asked by Microsoft employees on how they can handle their children and how they can support remote learning in their homes. And what I can tell you is the role of teachers has never been more respected because it's more visible now what's going on in classrooms. This is an unprecedented time in human history where the homework, the work in classrooms, the lessons are coming home very visibly to parents. Parents are seeing the tremendous role educators play. And I can assure you, the technology abundance that we see has only enhanced the value of teachers. For too long, we've thought the rise of technology equals the lowering of value of educators. And what we've learned, and frankly, Microsoft has always recognized, is that technology requires more value for teachers and really the greater impact teachers can have in our world. That's becoming clear. And I certainly recognize that teachers will be added to the row of heroes. Obviously, our first responders, our healthcare officials should get parades as we celebrate COVID, hopefully when the disease is wiped out. But I would add teachers to that list of a parade and recognize the value that they're playing in society. And certainly I think that that's something that's being recognized around the world. And we've seen that with tremendous heroism from some of the examples, and one of the examples I'll share in a bit. As we move on, I wanted to just reflect on the dynamics of what we're providing for remote learning support. Microsoft has been obviously learning and listening and helping at the government level and the school level with tools and resources and support. Sometimes this will be technology support. Sometimes it's going to be working through how do we help support cloud capacity to enable cloud experiences to scale rapidly. In other cases, it's going to be readiness and device support as it works to increase our supply chains and help manufacturers get access to the parts to make devices that we're going to need in the world. In some cases, it's actually helping with data mapping, working with scientific communities, putting public data on our cloud to help researchers think through COVID response. Microsoft has actually just put up over 300 million in-kind donation of our cloud platform in a partnership with C3 AI and top universities around the world to do research on the study of COVID response and cure, as well as pandemic support broadly. So we're investing in our research community to help. So there's a range of ways that Microsoft is supporting. But I want to highlight a couple of the technologies that many of you already know and are using, and some of the resources that we have to support. And then we'll hopefully get into some questions. So wanted to highlight in the next slide, the dynamics of what we're providing through our platforms. We have a number of technologies to support, and I will say one of the best practices and lessons we've learned, and this is probably something that many of you will learn from and share, is that remote learning dynamics are not as traditional, or don't necessarily need to be as traditional classroom agendas. In the early days in China, we saw a very literal translation with live sharing and video like we do now, and the course schedule. In fact, in many schools, students were asked to wear uniforms at home during their remote learning environments. And schools would start at the same time, classes would go through at the same time, etc. And there were two challenges with that we've recognized quickly had to be addressed. One was, it was very hard to keep students mature and focused throughout that long time looking at a screen. Students needed time to act and play and step away from their computers to do different things, and a broader learning modality needed to be embraced. The other pragmatic reality was we found that bandwidth was challenged when students were doing 5 or 6 hours of live video. In many cases, in homes with multiple children, there may have been 1 or 2 laptops or tablets that could be used for remote learning, but there was challenge when a student was using that laptop or device for the same time at the same hours every day. So what we've seen is schools embrace a wide variety of offline, physical, digital, asynchronous, and synchronous learning modalities as part of the remote learning landscape. And I urge you, as you think about building and growing in your remote learning plan, to think more broadly about how the dynamics of time can change, how you can use digital tools smartly. What we've seen in lots of schools is they may start on a live Teams chat in the morning. A teacher will go through the set of expectations throughout the day, provide some inspiring words, maybe highlight a scheduled lecture and group discussion that are going to be happening later in the day. Students will go out, maybe in groups, maybe independently, working through materials and reflecting throughout the day in a tool like Flipgrid of what they're learning and how they're progressing, and get feedback from teachers in Flipgrid as well. And those kinds of tools are being embraced, and there are many, many different examples, but we're seeing more richness in the learning path, and hopefully that thinking will continue once we get back into schools full time. As it relates to our platform, on the next slide, I want to just highlight the ways in which we're building a foundation. We know that this is a response time in crisis, but we also want to ensure that we keep motivated on the things that we're going to need going forward. So we're rapidly adding hundreds of millions of students onto our Office 365 Teams platform, and have done so over the last month. We're going to continue to add a lot more, and building it with the security, capacity, and responsiveness that you need on our cloud, but also making sure that we're doing things to ensure that our technology investments that we're making by schools, or the deployments that they're doing, are not something that will go away once the response is subsided, and that we're building it with the same focus on inclusivity, the support for IT staff to integrate with your existing security and existing platforms that we have. Obviously, we have rich environments on Office 365 for a range of different tools to communicate and collaborate, but also we are recognizing the importance of security, data privacy, and integration, and we're not relenting on our commitment to those things in this time of crisis for schools. All of these things can be also deployed for free. So actually, from a recognition of the dynamics of cost and the urgency of response, it's certainly an area that Microsoft is focused on. One of the things that we can do on the next slide is highlight just where Teams is taking shape for schools. And we're seeing Microsoft Teams really grow in importance. And what we've also worked to do is integrate with common platforms. This is something that we can do for existing LMS providers in Spain specifically, but large providers like Canvas, Schoology, Moodle have already integrated with Teams, even platforms like Zoom, where we've integrated Zoom with Teams. And we're doing this to help schools that are using these tools be as effective as possible, embracing their existing technology landscape and not creating extra disruption for schools now to create more churn for teachers, IT staff, etc. There are lots of scenarios in the next slide that you can highlight with regards to Teams, and there are many ways in which we can integrate, whether it's with school data sync, integrating with Gradebook. These scenarios certainly can be lit up now or lit up down the road, but we want to help make it easy to get out of the box and support Teams right now. So I'm just going to quickly highlight a number of resources over the next few slides. The first thing I'll point you to is the remote learning portal that we've built recently and landed, which is the one-stop place for all of the resources that I'm going to highlight, as well as just the place to go for updates, because we're updating the site daily as it relates to new news, as well as sharing best practices and links to materials that you can find helpful. Perhaps the most helpful tool that you should recognize and learn about is the Quickstart Guides. These have just been created to help an educator almost have these guides ready and handy at their desk. It's a very click-by-click, screenshot-by-screenshot view of how to do basic tasks within Teams, how to schedule a class, how to schedule an assignment, how to share screen, etc. So for educators that don't have an opportunity to participate in a global training partner training session, take a course on the Microsoft Educator Center, the quick guides are a handy reference to leverage. Even if you have done that, it's helpful to have the quick guides, and certainly we have them for students and as well as educators for sure. We also have been building remote learning best practices on demand. These are both live sessions that we've had, on-demand sessions. These are valuable for IT professionals managing your Office 365 environments, as well as educators who are learning from showcase schools and educators around the world who are doing remote learning scenarios. We've also been very conscious to support families, and we have home and family resources available on the portal. We've also leveraged and built a family educator center on the MEC. So the Microsoft Educator Center includes a family educator center. which includes activities, applications, and experiences for parents to leverage with their own children. And some of these things are valuable because they'll extend beyond the school and certainly beyond the school year to keep students engaged and ready for the next semester or school. The last thing I want to highlight is the parent guide for just remote learning support and just the foundation of what we want to do. So I hope that there are resources that are being helpful to you. I know that there are going to be a lot more resources that we'll create, and I want your feedback, both highlighting what you're doing that's being successful, as well as the things that you need to help you be more effective. We're working hard across the company, as Maria shared, but we want to make sure that we're listening and learning throughout this journey. I can tell you we're getting better every single day. Because this is an unprecedented activity, we're learning hard quickly around how to scale up the cloud capacity to need, some of the key priorities, as well as even some of the functionality that we need. There's updates that are happening with Teams to help some of the user control and some of the consumer activities that we like, you know, the ability to put fun backgrounds in Teams, even the ability to see students in video wall. We're adding functionality to our products based on feedback that we've heard directly from all of you. So continue to keep that feedback coming. As we transition, I just wanted to highlight this new approach with our Edu Days. Obviously, we love and look forward to getting back to physical opportunities to get together. But we're kicking off this series of digital connections because we value all of you and our ability to connect this community. In future sessions, we expect this to be led by educators sharing their stories and their journey, obviously keeping Q&A active so we can learn from each other and continue to motivate and give us an opportunity to decompress and de-stress. All of the resources on the next slide can be found where you'll get access to the resources that you need at www.education.microsoft.com. You'll see calendars of our edu talks that are coming, as well as ways in which you can participate directly. And I want to encourage you, all of you, to continue to participate and be part of these talks as well. We have 2 sessions that are coming up in April that I want to highlight specifically, and we'll be having more as we go. The biggest one we're going to have, just to kick us off on April 17th, we're going to start with the Showcase School, Colegio El Val, and to talk about what they've started with their school emergency response, the work that they've been doing. They just started with Twitter to get access to resources, the work that they've done, which is amazing and inspiring, to get students to send letters to people affected by COVID, letters to the staff that are helping support people, and how they've really used this as a moment to both motivate their children to get activated with regards to remote learning and engagement, but keep that social conscious alive with their children. Really inspiring story, and I encourage you to join us on April 17th for that session. On April 24th, we have a session that will give you an opportunity to meet a couple of amazing students and their teachers who are sharing both how easy they can use digital tools, their enthusiasm for digital tools, the way in which they're using MakeCode, which is a developer language platform many of you are familiar with, and just the engagement on STEAM and technology education through this remote learning time. It's going to be amazing for you to hear. And I'm excited to join you as well, because I can't wait to meet Valeria and Patricia, who will be presenting this session. 11-year-old children who are going to share and teach us all is an opportunity that I can never pass up, because it's always an opportunity to learn and get inspired by what's happening. Speaking of inspiring, I just want to give a shout out to a great educator and her story. Jessica Mendoza at Las Palmas in Gran Canaria have done amazing focus on supporting students with disabilities. She has embraced both the need for connection in these challenging times by bringing remote learning in rapidly, in some cases with tools that were not familiar before, but really bringing technology to her students in this time of tremendous challenge with COVID response. She's embraced tools like Class Notebook to keep our students engaged, bringing students together with digital tools in Office 365 and Teams. And the reality has been the engagement, the joy, the celebration on this experience has been really, really inspiring. And just one example of the kind of real impact that is being shown around the world. It's been amazing to see. It's been amazing to see throughout all of this journey, the real heroism, the leadership from our school leaders and educators, the value that they're delivering, and the role technology is playing to support. We know technology is never going to replace our desire to physically connect and share. We're going to see heroes like Jessica step up, great students like Patricia and present, and Valeria to present, that we're going to learn from every day. And technology plays a role, but we need to play an important role now to keep us connected. But we look forward to celebrating and sharing once this is all over and continuing the journey ahead. And so with that, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for your leadership and commitment. Thank you for the energy and the optimism that you're bringing to your children and students throughout this journey. It is a journey, and we think that we're going to keep these lessons long beyond the disease prevention stage that we're in now. There's tremendous human tragedy and loss of life, but we've got to recognize the optimism and positive things that we can come, motivate our students to embrace these new challenges with focus and purpose so they can prepare themselves to help our future, and then recognize that throughout all, the value that we have in a world that's increasingly using technology to keep us connected is the things that make us all human. The joy that we share, the motivation and inspiration that we give to each other, and the need to connect, which is a human condition that certainly has been highlighted in this time of change. So I look forward to hearing from you and opening up to any questions that you may have to share, as well as maybe lessons that you'd like to share from your own journey.
Anthony, thank you very much. We are really excited to see all these stories and all the resources that you have shared with us. We have the Q&A open. I'm going to start with 3 of them that started at the beginning, and I'm going to show you these questions. So first one, we have a question. Some teachers have realized of the importance of these days, not only to know the technology and the tools, but also the importance of understanding and feel secure of how to use them in a pedagogical and teaching way. Do you have any experience or insight to share with us in this aspect?
Yeah, this is one of the things that has been, frankly, surprising and somewhat disappointing with how little real focus has been used on these technologies to actually bring pedagogy and remote learning experiences into classrooms. We've been providing best practices and learnings, and we expect that there'll be tremendous learnings coming forward. The reality that I will say is, the first thing that I would say is a best practice is obviously knowing the digital tools is the least of it, and certainly there are courses and things like that to get access to. The first thing that I would do is recognize, and there's been a lot of focus on social and emotional learning, recognize the need to build confidence, motivation, and be much more connected to students in what they're going through and their emotional state than you normally would do in classrooms. It's important to just get everyone decompressing, recognize the ability to have some fun, to let down the guard within your children and be a little bit more human. You're now bringing yourself into the homes. So saying hello to family members, maybe asking children to share their favorite toy or introduce them to their pets. These are moments that will bring tremendous joy and humanness to the environment, and actually will help you create the right energy for learning. Be more curious to learn from student examples on how students can share and use tools and maybe their own best practices. Explore that actively with students. Hey, what are some of the things that you're all learning so we can get smarter and faster together? As it relates to curriculum and focus, shift more than you normally do to outcomes and purpose for every lesson. Give students quests that they complete. for the next 40 minutes, I want all of you to work through this problem, and we're going to come back in 40 minutes, and I want to share what's the most interesting thing you learned after reading that chapter, etc. Make it much more chunkable that way, and give students motivation to explore different things. And you can assign different things to different students because these digital tools enable us to connect in more deep ways than ever before. So those are just some best practices and tips that we've learned. But I will say we're learning every single day, and we're hoping to feature in these ongoing talks best examples that we're learning from. And I'm excited because I think it's elevating and we're getting smarter much faster than before.
That's really great and good idea to follow up also these steps and tips, also following the students. Another question, this is about artificial intelligence. So in the current environment, we as teachers may face situations that can be outside of our control in terms of classroom dynamic or manage students, or how do you think that artificial intelligence can help more teachers in this situation of remote learning?
It's a great question, and certainly we know the value of AI will help us going forward. Many institutions are reacting in a sort of crisis response mode, so we're getting the foundation in place. But the real value for AI is going to be for data insight as we get connected systems. So if we connect to student information system, gradebook, we can actually provide tremendous insight on learner progression to create both automated workflow as well as AI to help with data insight. So for example, automated workflow, there's a tool at Microsoft called Power Automate, which enables you to create dynamic workflows that automate some of the things that you may have to do manually. So maybe a student got a question wrong on a quiz. That could automate a workflow where they're getting learning materials or resources to support that question. It may be that students who are working on a project could get automatically put in groups or schedule study time based on the needs that they have. There's a number of different resources that can be automatically provisioned by IT administrators that connect to data sets to fuel, as students are engaging, they're getting much more personalized and differentiated experiences that don't require educators to actually figure out data and do that manually, but can be automated. Very much like when we're driving our cars with a navigation system, and maybe we are running low on gas, that the navigation system may give us an opportunity to drive to a gas station. These are things that you don't have to remove your hand from the wheel. Digital tools that are sensing what's going on around you can give you the right path. We have AI helping institutions enable those scenarios so learners can get experiences that reflect their individual needs, powered by AI and data. We certainly know AI will help institutions help drive improved learning outcomes, help reduce dropout, and increase student engagement based on just giving data to provide more personalization and support and awareness to educators on where the focus should be. We don't see those solutions being deployed right now in many cases because schools are just doing the foundational elements. But the good news is all of this stuff is in the foundational platform that you're doing. We have analytic engines within Office 365. We have data connectors within Teams to connect to school information systems, to Gradebook, to power this rich data capability. And Flow, which has been renamed to Power Automate, is inside of Office 365 that you can create dynamic workflows across a range of different Microsoft tools as well as third-party tools to both ingest content and provide learning pathways direct to students. And this is something that hopefully will build on the foundation that schools have to use AI more in the future.
Thank you, Anthony. We are looking through the questions. We have another one here. It's and he said the same. After these first weeks of 100% remote learning in many countries, what do you think on the next school year? I mean, how will the schools implement presential and remote learning in next year? Do you foresee any transition period, or will these situations change totally the way we teach at the schools?
It's a great question. It's something I'm certainly curious and thinking a lot about. I certainly do believe that the remote learning dynamics that we're going through are going to be here to stay and should be here to stay at some level. We should be able to embrace and connect to students beyond the classroom, extend learning, collaboration, and communication more naturally beyond the classroom. These are capabilities that we've had for long times in schools. Schools using Office 365 and Teams and other digital collaboration tools have had the ability to extend the learning more actively, but it's been not something that educators have been comfortable with to a large scale. Hopefully that will change going through this period. I still think that we'll have classrooms and physical gatherings of students. We'll have auditorium sessions, we'll play sports. That normal life will return, albeit with more recognition to wash our hands, to establish social distancing when pragmatic and possible, to be more conscious when we're ill, to stay away from school. There's going to be those dynamics that I think will become part of the natural mindset of people going forward. But I do think that we'll be back in gatherings as a society in normal ways going forward. But I'm hopeful that these digital tools will become more commonplace going forward. We're also seeing examples, and we've already seen this in the past, frankly, of schools that have done remote learning exercises in this context for resilience in the future. So one of the things I'm hearing is schools planning to do a week of remote learning every semester. So traditional schooling happens, there's a week where students stay home, not a spring break or a vacation, but an opportunity to continue remote learning outside the school. And that could help with pragmatic things, maybe a school refurb and cleanup, maybe a deployment that's happening, maybe professional development, whatever, while students are remote learning, but it also keeps that resilience and that muscle ready in times of crisis in the future where we have to engage these areas. So I do think that there will be more focus on remote learning in a sustained way, but I don't think it will be at the expense of our humanity connecting together in schools and gatherings and classrooms.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Anthony. We have more questions here. We have a couple of minutes more before going to the wrap up. So another question on live as well is, in your opinion, when is the correct time to implement technologies in a school?
Well, obviously, the reality is, because the technologies that we're highlighting primarily that we're using in schools with Teams and Flipgrid and even Minecraft, they're very easy to deploy because they're all built on the cloud foundation. It's easy to deploy, and we have remote learning resources to help with training and development for educators and parents. We think that the right time is now to help through this transition. There are a couple of considerations that are real. Obviously, device availability and connectivity is still a challenge in many homes. That's something that we've got to work through, and Microsoft is working both with device manufacturers, local telecommunications providers to help address. There are stimulus fundings that are happening around the world for governments to help with remote learning support for schools. But outside of those considerations, which are certainly important, we certainly embrace the needs to build the foundation now versus waiting. Waiting for back to school time, etc., is not necessary. And any learning that we can have now is going to help us be more prepared when school arises. The other thing we also don't want to see is schools waited out. Hey, we're not ready to deploy these resources. Let's hold in steady pattern and then hope that we can get back into school and continue business as usual. The schools that make that decision, the countries or the areas that make that decision, will be dramatically behind others in the world that I think will be motivated to use technology more actively and more naturally in the learning process going forward. And I think those countries will see a tremendous advantage in their education engagement, their efficiency of their learning development, and hopefully the impact on students. So I would say start now, don't be afraid, and Microsoft is here to help support as you go forward.
Thank you, Anthony. There are a lot of questions asking about the different materials. We have also published and localized and translated into Spanish, and my team is also answering there. So you have all the links there, and we will remind you where to find them as well.
Great.
And some question, another question you ask about how to use teams with students with disability and then helping to diversity. And then the question is something you already mentioned, but in case you have something more to add, is do you believe this is a good alternative to work with inclusion, with the inclusion of the kids?
I think certainly what we're finding is that the technology, it opens up a lot of barriers that maybe students have been connected from, etc. One of the things I've been hearing anecdotal feedback from educators that in this remote learning time, the shyest students have emerged as leaders. That they've seen different dynamics happen from their students that weren't happening in the physical classroom. And when we remove the dynamics of being face-to-face, in some ways we have different personas and different confidences that we can enable. Some students who are very outspoken and thrive off that energy and human contact and engagement in the classroom are becoming shyer in this dynamic of remote learning. And so inclusivity in a broad sense is important to recognize. As it relates to special needs students, Microsoft has been working hard to build both, high contrast readers, screen readers, ability to do language translation, and I shared this story from Jessica Mendoza. She's using the read feature in OneNote actively with her students, the ability to translate dynamically, to hover over words and get an image of the word to reinforce vocabulary and reading comprehension. There's many different accessibility tools that we've built into our products that can certainly be leveraged. And there are guides that we have both in the Microsoft Educator Center and in the Remote Learning Guide on how you can leverage the inclusivity functionalities that we've built into our platform. When I think about inclusivity, it's obviously dealing with special needs, but it's being mindful of the whole child, the dynamics that they're dealing with at home, the energy that you have to kind of drive from them in a digital experience. There's tremendous opportunity here, but it requires educators to be sensitive to and embracing inclusivity in all ways possible throughout this change.
Thank you so much, Anthony. We are going to close this piece of questions. Thank you so much to you and your team for this connection, the total Spanish community and beyond that, because we know we have people connecting from LATAM as well in the afternoon. It's more early morning for them as well, and also in EMEA. So thank you so much, all of you. And just one slide of final connect and feedback. As Anthony mentioned before, we are very welcome to receive your feedback. We have different ways to receive. You have the user's voice. You have also our local email address of education for Spain. You have also our hashtag to follow us and to revert to us for any comment in Microsoft EduEsp, and then also our hashtag to Clase en Casa, where you can follow up all the teachers, the innovative teachers in Microsoft that also supporting us and all the resources. Thank you so much, Anthony, and thank you to Andrea and the rest of the team that are connected, and Nicole and so on.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you.